I, Michael, 32, usually only visit the internet to read discussions on conspiracy theories, as I found that it's one of my favorite ways to pass the time. This, actually writing and contributing to the content online, is unlike me, and although I'm unsure how far it will go, or if it'll go anywhere at all, I can't stop myself from writing. At 32, I'm unfortunately learning how to be alone again after my experience. Finding new hobbies is one of the ways that I've been discovering myself, and I think writing may just be another outlet. With that being said, it's only fair that I write about the incident that got me to this place in the first place. I realize that I'm not alone and that a lot of you have similar stories yourselves. That alone feels like a little weight off my chest. Anyway, my wife was 30, and we'll call her Mandy. Mandy and I met at university. She was studying psychology with the hopes of being a therapist, and I, on the other hand, I chose business because I didn't know what else to choose. My parents were the ones pushing me to pursue something, and with all the pressure, I kinda just dived into it head first. I still feel like I wasted those 4 years, only to have a bachelor's degree in business management whilst doing construction now. Nevertheless, we weren't the closest at first, but we lingered in the same friend group, and we'd have small conversations from time to time. I guess this is where I also mentioned that she had a boyfriend, so we weren't really looking at each other that way. Or she wasn't. I think I always kinda had a thing for her. She dyed her hair navy blue in her second year, and I still remember my reaction when I saw it for the first time. It looked jet black, but when the sun shone on it, you'd see the true color, and it just framed her face so well. She had these big brown eyes, and every time you said something that surprised her, you could tell that she struggled to open them any wider. Mandy was just different. She was gorgeous, with an earthy hippie vibe, but she was also so fierce with everything she did. I admired her drive back in uni, how devoted she was to her studies, and how easy it looked for her to balance her social life and school. She was just everything I wanted in a person, and for 2 years, since we officially met, I had to swallow any feelings I had for her. She was completely in love with her boyfriend at the time, who I must add was a complete bastard. It was clear to everyone but her that he was controlling and toxic. It got to a point where she couldn't even hang out with us without him hanging on her hip, eyeing us when we spoke to her too long, or tightening his grip around her when she smiled at us or laughed. I wasn't sure how she didn't see it. I'm still not sure. Even a blind bat wandering in daylight could see Mark for what he was, a manipulative jerk. Still, I respected what they had and kept my distance. I listened to her like a good friend when she found time alone to complain, and I cheered her up with my support the best I could. It was hard to stand by and watch her slowly crumble. But I knew that the decision to leave had to come from her, even though I told her a million times. One day, everything changed for Mandy. Mark had a serious outburst and ended up hitting her. It was the first time, and apparently the last, because Mandy left him. The rest of the guys and I plotted to find him ourselves, but she was over the violence, and we had to respect her wishes to leave it alone. That night, Mandy asked to stay over at my dorm, and I allowed her to. I would have gladly laid my blanket out on the floor, but she insisted that we sleep next to each other. That was the moment that the dynamic between us changed. I didn't rush to confess my feelings, knowing that she'd been through so much already. I wasn't a clueless douchebag. I have her time and space, knowing that after 2 years of being blindsided, she'd need to heal. And that's what she did, with me right beside her. We started spending more time together during that time, and away from the group. It wasn't anything personal. I think Mandy just appreciated the fact that I stood by her even when she was struggling to stand for herself. We discovered new hobbies and visited different places off campus. When we had the time, my feelings for her were growing more and more, and it worried me. I started to doubt whether she'd actually see anything else besides a friendship in me, especially after a year went by and nothing had changed. Unexpectedly though, one night as I dropped her off at her dorm, Mandy asked me out. The moment felt surreal, as she confessed the feelings she had for me, and I blurted the same. We started dating, although it felt like with everything we'd done, we'd already started, and our relationship blossomed into something so incredulous. We spent our last year out of 4 years in uni together, studying together, and supporting each other. Mandy knew that business wasn't anywhere near something I actually wanted to do, but she didn't allow me to quit. We graduated together, with her fulfilling her dreams of becoming a therapist soon after, whilst I took up a career in construction. I didn't really have any complaints about that. I enjoyed the physicality and enjoyed the satisfaction of building things, especially with the co-workers I spent time with on a daily basis. Despite our differing professions, Mandy and I supported each other's choices and always encouraged each other. As time went on, our relationship grew stronger. We met each other's parents, and mine held a little skepticism toward Mandy. However, they eventually grew to love her. Mandy's parents, on the other hand, loved me almost immediately. We had a powerful dynamic going, and we both began to envision a real future together. 4 years after graduating, we decided to combine our resources and move in together in a spacious apartment in the city. We believed that we had done everything right. We took our time, dated, and truly got to know each other. However, bliss didn't last very long. 2 years after moving in, I started noticing a change in Mandy's behavior. She seemed distant towards me, no longer wanting me to touch her in bed, and avoiding our morning ritual of mandatory breakfast together. At first, I thought it was just stress from dealing with work. You know that therapists can't talk about their clients at all. So maybe she's overwhelmed and can't do anything about it. I tried to be there for her in solidarity, making her lunch and trying to initiate road trips when we both had some off time. I even made her a warm bath, wine, and her favorite book for 2 weeks straight. But the distance between us only grew, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease from her. Her behavior only worsened. She came home later on some evenings, as drunk as a skunk after work, climbing into bed with loud sour burps. It was something I'd never experienced, not even while in university. And to make matters worse, sometimes I would come home and find guests in our home, male guests at that she'd brush off when I tried to address my concerns. Mandy called me dramatic whenever I said anything, stating that I should get my own social life and stop being so clingy. It would be unfair of me if I didn't confess that it hurt to hear her completely dismiss my feelings, especially after how good things have been. I couldn't, for the life of me, understand the sudden change in her behavior. I like to think that we'd always been open and honest with each other, but now it just seemed like she was hiding things from me. I decided that I may have to approach this directly. I didn't want her to feel cornered, nor did I want her to feel like I was being clingy again. I thought of my words carefully as we sat on the couch one night. I remember she sat on the other side compared to between my legs, hugged up to the opposite side. I finally gathered the courage to inquire about what may have been going on. I asked her first if something was wrong, or if there was something she needed to or wanted to talk about. She said no without even looking at me and left it at that. I should have just left and put some space between us, but I stupidly continued talking. I decided to suggest couples therapy. I thought that maybe she would be more comfortable talking to a professional about things. Mandy's face when I suggested it resembled disbelief and disgust. I remember how my heart dropped when she practically sneered at me before ridiculing me for even suggesting it. Her thing was, why would she need to see a therapist when there was nothing wrong with her, but everything wrong with her, but everything wrong with me? Her words stung, and without another sentence, I got up and went to bed that night. The next morning, I headed to work, even before she had woken up. The guys wondered why I was there so early and also noticed my mood. I hate to admit it, but I cried. Like a wimp, I cried. Like a wimp, I cried because I felt like my girlfriend didn't love me anymore. After years of smooth sailing, I couldn't figure out where we went wrong, and it was eating me up inside. I honestly felt Ike a failure, and being vulnerable with them at first made me feel even worse. To my surprise, They were all pretty open to me. I expected them to tell me to man up, and maybe even ridicule me for crying when I couldn't help it, but they didn't. They patted my back, and while we worked, they listened attentively to what's been going on. The first thing they suggested was that she was cheating. I denied it quickly, brushing away the thought that Mandy would ever do that to me. We spoke about it a little more, as much as we could, over the sound of clanging and machinery, but eventually we decided that we'd just meet up again to discuss. It felt good to have a friend group of my own. That night, I went home and I actually got dressed. I was only heading to the bar, but it felt good to spray on my favorite cologne and my comfy blue jeans. Mandy questioned where I was going, and I told her honestly that I was grabbing drinks with my co-workers. After that, she didn't seem to care. Each and every one of those guys showed up. We sat at the bar, ordered a few drinks, and they began sharing their own stories, matching similarities between their ex's behavior and Mandy's. The more they spoke, the more a pit grew in my stomach. One in particular wasn't a personal story, but it was about his brother getting cheated on. Long story short, everything Mandy was doing, she did. His brother is now back at their parents' house, still recovering. That should have been my wake-up call, and honestly, it shook me a little bit, but still, I stood strong in my faith in Mandy. Things may not have been the best between us, but she'd never stooped that low, never. I acknowledged their advice, but I also dismissed their claims. As a final attempt to sway me, they urged me to at least consider looking through her phone to ease my mind, maybe even look for a journal or diary. It seemed like an invasion of privacy, and I told them that I wouldn't be doing that. They respected my views, but I could tell that they were genuinely concerned. I wouldn't take any of it back though, because that was essentially the moment all of us got closer. Truth be told, curiosity gnawed at me more and more as the days passed. I had to physically stop myself from taking her phone when she left it out in the open. She was still secretive about a lot of things, but it just felt so wrong on my end. Eventually, temptation overridden morality, and one night as she snored beside me, Guilt consumed me as I took her phone from the bedside, but I pushed it away. I can still remember how violently my heart was beating, and every 2 minutes I'd put it back where I got it, just in case she woke up. I scrolled through her emails, her photos, leaving messages for last, because I wasn't sure if I was ready to find anything. Maybe there wouldn't be anything to find. Wishful thinking. What I discovered shook me to the core. I almost checked the back of her phone to ensure that she hadn't taken someone else's by mistake, but nope. It was hers. There, in her text messages, was undeniable proof of her sending and receiving suggestive messages from one of her clients. At that moment, I felt like I was going to be sick. Not only was that a direct violation of the ethical codes she needed to uphold, but she had violated our relationship too. I turned to her, watching her sleep peacefully while I was stuck in turmoil, and rage boiled through me. After everything that went on between us, I couldn't believe that she had cheated, but not just with anyone. With a client, it disgusted me. It's not that I was taking sides with the guy, but I just couldn't feel any animosity toward him. I knew that the people who sought therapy were people who were struggling with their mental health, and it felt like she was taking advantage of him. How could someone do that to another person? How could a therapist do that to another person? Despite the anger I felt, more than anything, I was repulsed. I didn't even have the energy to feel sorry for myself. I spent the night going through their messages. The flirty texts and intimate conversations were often started by her. She would send suggestive pictures when he took too long to reply, and she just looked so desperate. The worst part about all of it was that she seemed to have started this almost the first week she started working as a therapist. Mandy, a woman I held to the highest standard in my life, was a complete loser. She was manipulative, just like her previous boyfriend. Everything I thought about her was wrong, and she'd just been letting me believe that there was something wrong with me. My blood boiled, and I knew that once I couldn't even lay next to her for a moment longer, that I'd get my revenge. There was no way that I was going to allow her to live happily doing the sick things that she does, especially not after using and draining me the way that she did. She was going to feel the same pain and humiliation, and I made sure of that. I took all the evidence from her phone and gathered it. It wasn't hard to find the licensing board or file a complaint. I included all the text messages, the pictures, and the client's name. I silently hoped that it wouldn't impact him too much, or if at all. It didn't take long for them to act upon it, especially since this was a very serious violation. I watched everything unfold, and up till then, I had also kept my distance from her. She didn't even question it. She continued to live her life as normal until one day she came home a mess. They not only fired her, but they revoked her licenses and banned her from being able to practice anywhere else in the world. If that wasn't humiliating enough, they had her published as a warning, and our family and friends got to know what had happened. Her parents had reached out to me, apologizing for what had happened and expressing their disappointment. They assured me that no matter what, I'd always be welcome in their family. My own parents offered for me to come home to take care of me, but I declined. I was a grown man. I had to stand on my 2 feet. Mandy's life had drastically changed almost overnight, and she had the nerve to come to me to seek comfort. Suddenly, she loved me again, and I was all she ever needed. Suddenly, she didn't mean to cheat, and she didn't mean to cheat, and she didn't know what got into her. Suddenly, she wanted to go to therapy and fix things between us. I didn't believe a single word that left her mouth. I knew that I was truly all she had left. Those who once supported her turned their backs once they found out. Even her parents blocked her off. I was over Mandy and her games, and all I wanted to do was move on with my life. My name was the only one on the lease, and so I kicked her out of my house. She pleaded and cried, begging me not to abandon her, and then refusing to take the suitcases filled with clothes that I had packed for her. I almost felt sorry for Mandy. Hell, I almost regretted what I had done. But it was time to put myself first. I had to have her removed by security, and on the way out, I let her know that I'd have her things placed downstairs for her. That was the last I personally heard from Mandy. For a few months afterward, she tried to reach out, but I ignored her. I had the support from my co-workers, who I'm glad didn't say, "I told you so," but rather made sure that I knew they were here for me. Last I knew, Mandy was bouncing between motels and homeless shelters. She had a job at a fast food restaurant, but we know in today's day and age, you're gonna need much more than that to properly take care of yourself. Many times I found myself wondering if revenge was the best way to go, or if I could have taken care of things differently. I have to remind myself that I didn't make Mandy cheat, nor cheat with a client. She could have cheated with someone else, and still had her job. Minus me, I did the right thing. Even if it wasn't exactly coming from a moral point of view, her parents still weren't talking to her, and neither were her friends. I hope this is a lesson to her, and despite what she did, I hope she knows that I don't hate her. I just want nothing to do with her. I wish I could give an update on the client she cheated with, but I didn't know him all that well. All I have is a name, and although I've tried to look him up, there isn't much I can find. I hope that he's gotten real help for whatever he's going through though. That's all I can really say about that. All in all, I'd just say that life for me is much better. I'm focusing on myself and my family and building friendships along the line. I'll never say that I won't fall in love again because I know all women aren't the same. What I will say though is that I'll never stick around a woman who clearly has her own thing going on. You know what they say, when people show you who they are, believe them. The most important conclusion I derive from this story is to subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories in the future. Let me know what you thought about the author in the comments. Was his revenge too weak or too brutal?